Hello my friend and welcome back. My name is Hannah and today is my final installment of my 2022 Declutter series and it is my eyeshadow palettes. If you want to see any of my episodes this year or from previous years, I do have my Declutter playlist linked down below. I'm not going to have links obviously for all of these palettes. I have a lot. I am a small creator. All of these palettes were bought with my money. I did not get any PR. I think some of these are gifts, but all of these I spent my money on. So looking at them, it's like all the hours of work I worked to put into this. Anyway, I would just want to kind of step on my soapbox for a little bit. I usually buy makeup products that I intend to like. I don't buy anything with the intention that it's not going to work out. If I purchase something, my hopes and expectations are that I didn't waste any money purchasing that item, and sometimes things just don't turn out for me. And that could be whether it's the formula, the shade, maybe, I don't know. Sometimes my interests change and I'm just not into that palette as much anymore, but when I got it, I was. So I don't know, I just want to start off with that. Okay, perfect. So looking at like the top, I have a pile here, and what you can't see off camera, and then I have you also can't see this either. I have a basket full of palettes. So I'm going to start with this pile right here, and then as I get through them, I'm going to shift things around. Perfect. So let's start with these palettes right here, and these are the Clados Futurism palettes. I have the Sci-Fi Green, Astro Pink, Lunar Lavender, and Sashimi City, and I'm not decluttering these. Not only do I like the formula of these palettes, I do want to keep them for reference, as Clados is one of my favorite makeup brands. And they seem to be going through a bit of a shift of aesthetic. I mean, that's kind of like the nature of Clados. If you've been following them for a while, I feel like they've gone through many different phases. But even with this Sci-Fi Green palette, which is no longer available, this is one of my favorite grungy green palettes. I reach for this one the most. I love this mustard yellow. I love the Super Shocks that are in here, and these three mattes are absolutely wonderful. This is one of my favorite black mattes of all time. These are just wonderful palettes. I think that they're phasing these out because there's a fourth one that I don't have, but that one I think is like a turquoise and an orange. But I know that you can get the Sashimi City, Lunar Lavender, and Astro Pink from them currently. But I think once these are sold out, like, I don't think that they're remaking these, and I think that's what happened with these first ones. I think they're phasing these out, because when you look at their new collections coming out, it's not really like this anymore. But I guess long story short, I'm holding on to these ones, so I'm going to move these ones to the side. I also have the Club Nebula palette. This was a collaboration effort between Angelica Nieves and Clados. So obviously, I'm not getting rid of this, because if you've watched my channel, I think I mentioned Angie in almost every other video. She has the same like color as God, that sounds terrible. Her skin type is very similar to my own, not just in shade, but also in texture, if that makes sense, or like the normal oily combination thing, skin type. Is that the word I'm looking for? Gosh, English is surprisingly my first language. But this palette is absolutely wonderful, not just because it's a collaboration effort with Angelica Nieves, but I love the tones in this palette. I kind of use this more as a companion palette. I can do looks with it, or make looks out of this palette and use it on its own, but what I like to do is take these deeper shades that are in here and kind of deepen my looks as needed, because not all palettes come with a deeper matte. So I kind of appreciate that Angie gave me all of the deep mattes that I could ever want in one palette. My favorite is this Naru shade. I like to use this in my lower lash line. I like to blend it out or use it to blend out other shades in my look sometimes, but also pairing it with this Rock Copper shade, it's like the best. The You're My Only Hope is a beautiful, beautiful duochrome. It's like a very shifty shade, and I love this palette. It's not going anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if there was another collaboration effort between these two. I don't know if it would be like the Club Nebula 2, but I don't know. I'm very excited to see where Clados goes color-wise, because I also have these two quads. And these quads aren't really anything like too crazy. One is the brown. I believe this is called the Cold Brew palette. And then this one is more of like a black gray palette. This is also another one of my favorite black mattes. This one is a bit more buttery and has a little bit more fallout, so you can't press too hard into the pan, but I really do enjoy this one as well. I reach for this one more than the one in my Sci-Fi Green palette as of late, but the one in my Sci-Fi Green was the one that I reached for always. These quads are really nice, and they have two other quads in their collection, but the shades in those quads are very similar to shades that I already have in my collection, so I don't really need them. And I think moving forward, I won't purchase any of the other quads unless they are interesting color stories, because Clados can do color stories like this. This is the Flower Punk palette, where it is just very bright and vivid, even though it is kind of grungy and deep. And this palette should be coming back on a restock, so if you can get your hands on it at the restock, I highly suggest it. To my understanding, this was only supposed to be limited edition for spring 2021, but it seems like they're adding it to their permanent line. The only reason why it's on a restock right now is because it seems like there's been some like shipment issues or supply issues for some of the ingredients for these shades. But I would like to see something like this kind of translated into something like these quads. But otherwise, I mean, I'm keeping all of my Clados collection. Again, they're my favorite brand, and I love the shadows. They work really well for me. Let's continue with the pile right in front of me, and then I will go this way. I think these are my Melt palettes. Yes. So this is my She's and Parties palette. This isn't going anywhere. This is one of my favorite kind of plummy tones. What I really do enjoy about this palette is that the Skeleton Kiss shade, if you liked that Hades Super Shock highlight, but you don't have your hands on it, or you had to declutter yours because maybe yours was a lot older than mine is, this is a similar tone to that. It is really, really pretty, and this is eye safe. I don't know if the Super Shock highlights are eye safe. It would make sense to me that they are, but I kind of also understand why it wouldn't be, because it is meant to be on your face. But this is just a wonderful palette. These lighter tones are really pretty. I love the She's and Party shade, as well as the Mean Streak shade. This is just a wonderful palette. This is one of my favorite Melt Cosmetics palettes. They got this one so right, and I wish that all of the palettes in their collection had the same quality, like the same kind of performance. This one is really, really good. These are the Gemini palettes. So let me talk about Gemini 2, because this one should be fairly short. This is the Gemini 2 palette, and this isn't going anywhere. Actually, let me flip this so I don't blind you. This palette isn't going anywhere. It is absolutely wonderful. I love these pinky tones, these rosy tones, and then these green tones. I will say, though, that I kind of wish that this Bella shade was true to pan. It looks very light in pan, but it's actually kind of like not a neon pink, but like a soft pink, like the rose right here. So it actually isn't like a light pastel, because I would think that I could use this in like as an inner corner highlight, but I can't. But I can use it to blend out and soften these other deeper rose shades. And this shade Mateo is one of the prettiest green metallics. It's so gorgeous. And Lovesick is one of my favorite. Lovesick and Schmood, these two shades, I will reach in this palette just to use these two on their own. They're absolutely gorgeous. This one, like the She's and Parties palette, these two together I kind of like to pair. I think this is a really nice collection, especially if you like the pinks and purples. Now let's talk about the Gemini palettes, because these are the same palette. This was the first run of the palette. This was the second run of the palette. So this is what it looks like on the inside. It is a beautiful palette. It has those grungy greens. It has like this mustardy yellow and some browns. This black matte actually isn't bad. I don't think that it's a bad one. It doesn't, I just don't like it as much as my sci-fi green one, but they still perform really well. So if you had your eye on the Gemini palette, pick it up. It's absolutely gorgeous. I will say that this Gemini shade here though is a little bit flaky, but the real problem is in this Gemini palette. So this one is the original, and this one was like a fan favorite for a while, and then it disappeared. And then they brought it back, obviously reformulated, but that wasn't until years later. And the issue was that people were getting, like, the shadows were falling off. They were puffing up in the pan. And I think it was something along the lines of like the aluminum that they used for the tray was reacting to the chemicals in the shadows. Because as you can see with this Gemini shade here, it's all over the place. Like, I'm getting it all over my hands. It's really flaky and falling apart. I mean, when I first got this palette, it didn't have any problems. This Gemini shade did come to me flaky like this. But now I can see that there's some puffing with this black matte and a little bit with this goals. And I think I'm going to declutter this one only because I've already done my review and my comparison of the two palettes. Like, I've already made that video. There's no reason for me to really hold on to this, especially when I have the other one. And this one was discontinued because of an ingredient issue. I don't really want to put this near my eyes. And now that I'm kind of starting to see changes in my own palette, it's definitely time to let it go. So I mean, this one, I don't know, it makes me sad because it is the original, but now I have a better quality version of that. So I'm going to pass on this one, and I do think that this one did perform a lot better than this one. Like, this one was really nice, but I think this is a new and improved formula. So let me move these to the side, and then I think, okay, then we have the Millennial Pink palette. This one is a weird one for her melt, because this one is a very, you either love it or you hate it. And you can be a really big melt enthusiast and hate this palette, or you could have never tried melt before and love this palette. It's very interesting. So this is what the Millennial Pinks palette looks like on the inside, and it, in theory, is a very gorgeous palette. What I think the issue with this palette is that it's taking an aesthetic from an earlier time, but not putting a modern twist to it, if that makes sense. So this palette, you can definitely make the 2004, 2005 like orange, like OC Paris Hilton makeup look, but it's gonna look like it's from 2005, like with the same kind of texture. It's not gonna look like the 2022 version of the Paris Hilton look, if that makes sense. Like, you're gonna look just like Paris Hilton in 2004. I don't know, for some people there's nothing wrong with that, and that's ideal, but you really have to kind of work these shadows and baby them and touch them up in a way to get them to work. Like this Pink Leather and Flamingo Dream, even the Modern Love, I have these 3 shades in different palettes, so it doesn't really bother me, but these ones don't blend out as well, and especially the Pink Leather and Flamingo Dream, they're not very pigmented. Like, they're very light and very patchy. This Rose Brunch metallic is not very good, but the Mixed Emotions and the Pink Noise and the Moon Glow are very nice. I don't mind the GF and Euphoria shades back here. They're not necessarily the best, But when I do want like that navy kind of blue shade to deepen up a look, I can reach for these, and these are very nice, especially in the waterline, or excuse me, the lower lash line. But I don't know, if you weren't using them more, if I don't know how to explain this, if they're good to deepen up a look, but like you would have to kind of blend these with a deeper shade already. Like, does that make sense? Like using them on their own, they can look kind of patchy and spotty depending. So I mean, as far as like the melt palettes go, this isn't like high on the list. Like, I wouldn't recommend this to someone who's just trying melt for the first time, but I also don't know if I would necessarily recommend this to someone who is even looking to do like a pink millennial kind of look. I'm not going to declutter it because I do find purpose for it in my collection. I don't mind it, but it is one of those melt palettes, like, it's not the first melt palette that I personally would reach for. And then I have this Urban Decay Naked Ultraviolet palette. And this one, I don't know, I feel like it kind of rocked the internet. If you have been watching my channel from the beginning, this is the first palette that I used online, and it is one of my favorite palettes. My opinions of this palette have changed over time, especially with using different formulas and different brands. But I think this palette was the response to the popular euphoria trend that was going on at the time, like that cyberpunk fairy kind of aesthetic. So these aren't very pigmented, but it's more so to be the wash of color that you get on your lid. Like, it's not meant to be like, I don't know, this is like club makeup. Like, I don't, like going to a rave, going to a nightclub. This isn't necessarily like sit down in front of the camera, like content creator kind of makeup. I still am going to hold on to this palette because it has a soft spot in my heart, and I do enjoy it. Like, this Lucid shade is a very nice like lid topper, and this digital is a really nice, it's one of those, it's not like a glitter in the formula like Colourpop, but it is like a shimmery metallic kind of shade that I'm okay with putting in my crease and in the outer corner. It looks really pretty, but it's not a true matte. And I mean, the Cyberpunk, Euphoric, and Purple Dust, like these shades right here, and Warning, like these purples really have it down. It's these ones right here, these more neutral tones that like Mind Slip and Trippin' I could do without. Like, I have these shades in other palettes that perform a lot better, but this VR is very nice. Like, if you had the what was it, the Urban Decay Solstice, like the single, this is kind of similar to that. I like this palette. It's cute. I don't know how many more declutters this is gonna last, because I think this is my oldest palette in my collection, question mark, maybe. That could be a lie. I forget that I still have some old palettes from long ago. Okay, so then let's tackle this pile right here. These are my BH Sweet Shop palettes. These are monochromatic palettes. This is a monochromatic green. This one is a monochromatic red. And then this one is a monochromatic orange. This one still has the plastic for some reason. And I'm going to hold on to these. I do like them. If I'm being honest though, I mostly reach, well, I really only reach for the mattes in these palettes. I don't think these are like necessarily pressed glitters. Well, I think the top ones right here in the corner are a pressed glitter, and then the other ones are metallics. I just tend to like matte shades more, and I like a metallic that I can kind of use as like a, I don't know, like a lid topper. These are really pretty, and sometimes I get into the mood of a nice metallic. It just depends, but if I'm being honest, again, it's mostly the mattes. I'm kind of sad that these are discontinued, because this red matte, it doesn't perform as well as the one in the Club Nebula palette, but this would be the one that I would suggest if you were looking for a nice deep matte red. Unfortunately though, just like the Club Nebula palette, you won't be able to get your hands on these ones unless you find them in your TJ Maxx. Sometimes I see them floating around. I don't know what's going on with BH. I hope that they do make a comeback and can re-release these palettes, because these were a fan favorite. But I think these are really like the only I take that back. No, I have one more monochromatic palette, I believe, but I mean, this is the core of them. I don't really have too many monochromatic palettes. And then I have my Natasha Denona palettes. This is the Love palette. This one is super pretty. This is discontinued, but this was limited edition for a while. This is one of my favorite like red purpley palettes. This is just, looking at the shade Commitment and Transparent, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you guys are so pretty. But again, see, I have that Valentine and Intense shade. I will pull these to do when I play with the Millennial Pink palette. I will pull these ones over the ones that are in that palette. This is just a beautiful palette and I do enjoy it. I miss when Natasha Denona did this kind of quality. I'm kind of curious to see what she does for Valentine's Day this year, because she usually always does something, which I enjoy, and I enjoy the releases that she does have for Valentine's Day. This is my favorite Natasha Denona palette. This is the Retro palette. This is a very loved palette in my collection. I will use this for work. I will use this at home. I will use this on camera. When I don't know, when I don't really want to do something that's like too bold and like too colorful, I will go for this. And it's such a really pretty palette. This is the palette that I would suggest to anyone who has either not tried Natasha Denona, like this would be the first palette I would suggest to them to try and purchase, or someone who, you know, is maybe new to makeup and is looking, you know, for that one really nice palette to have in their collection. They may not like, you know, do really bright, colorful looks, and they're not really like a makeup collector in this way. They're the one or two palette kind of friend. I know a lot of us kind of have a friend like that, and this would be the one that I would suggest to them, because you can go very light, you can go very dark, and I like that there's a range in between in this palette. And then this is the Pastel palette, and the way that this palette has affected me, I want to love this palette. I want to say that I love this palette as much as I love the other two palettes that I have, but I would not suggest this Pastel palette to anyone, I don't think. This is just not the quality of Natasha Denona that I know and love, and ever since this palette came out, her releases after this have also been unimpressive to me, and the quality in this palette, I'm just, like, as you can see, I've tried to use Bubble and Bora, and these are supposed to be the like cream to matte kind of finish, and they're not as pigmented as I've seen them and swatched them from other palettes. This airy blue shade, I have this shade in a few other palettes that I just like a lot more. These are like, this is a great what is it, a great companion palette, but for the price and how big it is, you would think that you could be able to use it alone. So I'm still going to hold on to it, but again, it's not necessarily my favorite Natasha Denona palette. And then I have two, I think this might be my oldest palette. I have the ABH Norvina palette, and I can't get rid of this one. This one has been so good to me, so loyal to me. It's a beautiful palette, and I think I may have other palettes with a similar color story in my collection. Like, I love this shade Base. It was my favorite inner corner highlight for a long time. The rose gold is very beautiful. Again, this Love shade, I could use this instead of the flamingo shade in the Millennial Pink palette. This is just a gorgeous, gorgeous palette, and I don't know, I think this will survive maybe another declutter, but I don't know. It's the oldest palette in my collection, and it's hard for me to get rid of it. Even though I don't reach for it as often, I do want to keep it in my collection because I love it. I have a close, I don't know, sentimental value for this palette. And then this is an older palette, but this is new to my collection, and this is the Subculture palette. And I think the internet owes this palette an apology. I think people were very harsh on this palette. I think they were very mean to this palette. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful palette. And I think it got a bad rap for no reason because it's not for the, I don't know, the beauty guru of 2016 who does a very specific, you know, smoky eye look. I think this is for my grungy girls who like to do really like bold goth kind of looks. And it's a gorgeous palette and I really do love it. And I don't know, I think this palette got such a bad rap. I don't think we've seen the crushed velvet packaging since this palette. I don't know, like this palette kind of put ABH in a place where they changed, and I don't know. Once this palette came out, like the history of ABH kind of shifts and changes. So just for the historic value, I'm gonna hold on to this palette. Okay, so then let's get into this pile. A lot of these next palettes are palettes that I usually have behind me. You might see them at the top in my frame. I have a little tray that holds them. Usually I have my favorite palettes in there, the ones that I reach for the most, or things that I'm reviewing at the time, or things I want to try and use for the season. So this is the Pat McGrath and Bridgerton palette. This is a part of that first drop. And I love that you can find this at TJ Maxx now. I haven't seen it in my TJ Maxx, but I don't know if I'm necessarily ready to see it in my TJ Maxx because I paid full price for this. But this is the inside of that palette, and for as limited of looks that you can do with this palette, I actually reach for this palette a lot. And that's because I love this matte shade down below. It's my favorite like liner kind of shade, and I do like to use this in my inner corner. If I can find a way to use this particular matte, I will. I like these two baked kind of shadows. It's a unique formula that I haven't really seen in any other palette of mine. I would like to have this formula in different shades. I do love these two metallics. This one just on its own on the lid paired with this matte, like in the lower lash line. It is very sultry, very pretty, and I do love this blue metallic shade. It's very like cyberpunk fairy, if you will. It's very, very pretty. I enjoy this palette. If you can find it at your TJ Maxx, I love a good deal. I truly do. I don't know if I could tell you to spend the $60 on this palette like I did, but I do think that it's a nice palette. This is the only Pat McGrath palette that I have, but I'm okay with having this one. This one speaks to me, and I'm not even a fan of Bridgerton. I've never watched it, and my coworker talks about it all the time, and she's just like, I can't believe you spent money on that palette, and you've never seen the show, but I liked the color story. And here's my girl again. So I have the Odin's Eye and Angelica Nevis Hella palette. This has been my most used palette of 2022. I think there's very few times I haven't reached for this palette. I've said this time and time again every time I talk about this palette. The shade Soot is my absolute favorite. I love the grungy greens in here. I love the pinks in here. This double-sided like duochrome shade is absolutely beautiful. I think the only shade I haven't used as often is the shade Venom. Otherwise, like, I love this palette. It is officially now discontinued. I believe they finally sold out of this palette. It's gorgeous. I love it, and again, Angie she has a way with color story, I swear. Like, or her eye for shades, I say this time and time again, is just so good. This is my Lost in Los Angeles palette from BH Cosmetics. I actually found this one at a TJ Maxx. This white matte has carried, you know, its back must be sore from carrying the team on its back. This is a really nice pastel palette, and although the shades don't quite look as pastel and pan, they really are the true pastel shade. Like when you think of I don't know, like pastel watercolor, these are the shades for it. And the metallics in this palette are also really, really pretty. The mattes, I think, are the best performing. I would suggest this one over the Natasha Denona Pastel palette. I think this one is still available on the BH website. Some of your Sephoras might still have it, or you can try your TJ Maxx Marshalls and they would have it. If you can get your hands on this palette, I say go for it, please. I couldn't recommend it enough. It is a wonderful, wonderful palette. This is my Haunted Europe palette from Nomad Cosmetics. This one was actually gifted to me from a girlfriend, and I love this palette. It is a lot of like cool tones with some little peekaboos of some warmer tones. It's mostly cool toned. I love this Dragsholm Castle shade, but I think my favorite is this Count Dracula shade. I reach for this one and Ghost River a whole lot. As far as Nomad palettes go, this one is a little bit like, I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily like beginner friendly, but it could be. I don't know. I think this is the palette for the girls, again, who like to do like the grungy goth kind of look. So I guess that's me because I have a number of palettes like this in my collection. It's just, this is my favorite Nomad palette. It's really, really pretty. I have one more melt palette, and it is the Mariposa palette. I believe this one is finally discontinued. I can't really, they had it at Sephora, and I don't think it's on the Sephora website. I think you maybe can still get it from the Melt website. It was heavily discounted very shortly after release. This was their holiday release last year, and it's a really nice palette. I really do enjoy it. When I look at this, it doesn't necessarily give me Christmas, but it doesn't just give me spring or summer either. Like, I feel like this is a very nice, well-rounded palette, color story wise. The mattes are really nice. I like the metallics in this palette. Usually Melt only had red tones in their holiday releases, but the red tones in this palette are very, very pretty. I love the plummy purples in this as well. If you got your hands on this palette, I think if you couldn't get your hands on this palette, I'm hoping that Melt can continue to release really fun things like this, because their holiday release this year, I wasn't as impressed with it. And I think this palette, like, its biggest mistake was that the pans were so small, but there's still so much like real estate. I understand that they want to do this like butterfly design, but I don't know, they already have the butterflies imprinted in a majority, like in all the matte shades, there's a butterfly imprint in it. So I don't know if they necessarily needed that. This was very big and very expensive, and because I bought it the day of like release, I paid full price for this palette. If you were able to get this on the sale, that's a steal. I'm not decluttering this palette. I really do like it. I'm realizing now that I haven't really decluttered too many things. Uh-oh, it might be like my highlighter video. This is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics, the Dollhouse palette, and this is, I'm not a huge fan of big palettes. I think I have 1, 2, 3 that I'm going to be talking about. If I'm buying a large palette, it has to be an impressive color story for me. I love this palette. I love the Blend Bunny formula. I have played with some of the other palettes. I do not own them, but I have played with them. And what I really enjoy about these palettes is the way, like, I appreciate how they're organized. Like, they go same formula across, but down it's like a similar shade family. So like, I could do a whole look with, you know, this row going down, or, you know, I can kind of like play across diagonally. Like, it's very appealing to my eye to kind of put colors together. But the formula in these are absolutely wonderful. I love these deep tones here, but I love that I have a light and a mid-tone kind of shade. The color story itself is very nice. These are all kind of shades that I gravitate towards. They do have another one. Is it the All Done Up palette, which is like the neutral palette with a pop of color? I think this one is also like a neutral palette. I think this is more so for my... Well, I don't know. I don't know if this palette is more so for the neutral lovers, but it's a beautiful palette. I I couldn't recommend it enough. If you've never tried Blend Bunny Cosmetics, but you didn't necessarily want a rainbow palette, I would say get the Dollhouse palette. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay, now we're down to these 3 palettes, and these ones might be the ones that I declutter. So I do have I have 2 of the Makeup Revolution Matrix palettes, and if you saw my review video for these, I made the same look with both like I did 1 palette per eye and I made the exact same look, but when I show you what the inside of these palettes look like, you're gonna be shocked. I made the same look with these 2 palettes. I guess looking at them in frame, they do look kind of similar, except, you know, this one has the top one has a bit more of a pop of color. Yeah. This one, actually the black one has kind of grown on me. I have used this a few times, and I think these ones perform a lot better than the other palette. I will say though, I do have to change up how I do my makeup with this palette. Like I had to baby it kind of in a way. I also don't like that this is like the Futurism palettes. The name is on the plastic, so that's the only reason why I'm holding on to it. I'm gonna keep the black one. I don't know, I think it might be time to part with the green one, which is unfortunate, but when I'm looking at this color story, the metallics aren't very great at all, but the mattes aren't either. The mattes aren't either, and really it's these like slime green ones that have really called to me, and I think the only reason why I purchased this palette. So I think it's just time to part ways, and it makes me sad because I don't know, I love the Matrix. I love anything that's sci-fi, cyberpunk specifically. I love the Matrix movies. I think I already just said that. This was the Trinity palette, and then which one's this one? This one is the Morpheus palette. I want to keep the God, I love Trinity. She's so cool, but this palette is just not it, so it's time for it to go. But I will keep the black one. I will keep the Morpheus one. At least that one performs well. And then I have this big giant palette, and let's talk about it. So this is the Jeffree Star Orgy palette. I'm not monetized, so it doesn't matter. It's just a big giant nude palette, and I had this palette. I think this might be my second oldest palette that I have. I have this palette in my collection only because I cosplay, and it's very important to have a wide range of nude shades for shape-shifting your face. And what I enjoyed about the formula of this palette is that not only could I use it on my eyes, I could use it on my face, and I could really kind of give myself, you know, different kind of effects and shadow placements in my face. And I think for that reason, I don't know, I might still hold on to this. I don't know if this palette has necessarily gone bad. It's just hard. So like this voyeurism shade, like I would use to set my under eye because it is more of like a yellowy tone. And then I just have the range of different shades down below that I would use to contour not just my eyes but also my face. And this palette just saves me a lot of money from having to buy different bronzers and things in different shades. I don't know, but I don't necessarily support Jeffree Star, and I found this palette. I don't necessarily support Jeffree Star, but I don't think it's a terrible formula, at least not for what I use it for. But when I do want to use like just brown shades on my lid, this isn't the palette I reach for. This is more so for cosplay. This is just like my makeup artist makeup palette. I think I'm gonna hold on to it, and I'm gonna save it for now. I think I might change my mind if I find other palettes in my collection that can still give me that same effect or like the same like use. I don't know. I don't necessarily buy too many neutral palettes. I'm just gonna put this one to the side and we'll see what happens. I'm gonna scoot the basket over because now we're getting into basket territory. And like I said, look, there is a ton of palettes in here. So let me move the things that I am gonna keep over here. So then I can bring the things that I'm not gonna keep to the side. And I also have some Colourpop quads. Let me pull these to the side. Okay, so here's the basket so you can see it in frame. Oh gosh, there's so many things in here. This is really what causes me chaos most days. So starting from the top, this is the Nomad Home for the Holidays palette. This is my only like all shimmer palette. The black matte in this palette is absolutely really amazing. What I love the most about the palette is this red metallic. This white metallic is also really pretty. I think as far as like metallic shades go, I think these ones are really nice. I wouldn't say that these are necessarily like duochromes. They're just really, really beautiful metallic shades. And I love this black matte because if you use this as a base and pop these ones on top, they really do shine through. It's absolutely gorgeous. This was limited edition for holiday last year, so I don't think this one is available anymore. But I will hold on to this one because this one was also gifted to me from a girlfriend. And I don't know, I really enjoy this palette. And when I want a really good metallic, I know I can find one in here. This is my Lovisa Detective Conan from the new Styly collection. This is the Kid the Phantom Thief palette, or I don't know what is this palette called? The Detective Conan new Styly collection. If you watch Detective Conan, I don't know. This is one of my favorite animes of all time, and as I said in my, I think that video would have been live now. I did make a things I almost bought in 2022, and I talk about the Maybelline and Pikachu collection. And I said that I didn't buy it because I bought the Detective Conan stuff instead. And this is the inside of the palette. It is very basic. These shades aren't very metallic. Like, this is a true Asian beauty palette, and I kind of love it for that. Like, look, it even comes with like this like old school like a sponge applicator. I can't even get it out. One of these bad boys. One was, I don't even think you see these in American palettes anymore. The ends are really soft though. That's nice. This is a cardboard palette, which is also very nice. I like the imprints in the palette. I love that little Conan is right here. I'm saving this palette, even if I don't really use it as often. I am saving this palette because I do love the series. This is like anime merch for me. I would love to see more anime collaborative efforts. I know it happens a lot in Japan, but I would love to see it, you know, at least in the West, or just, you know, from other companies that don't necessarily do like the Asian beauty trends, who don't mind, you know, doing the big pop of color, because I would love nothing more than a cyberpunk palette. Well, I guess it's not an anime, that's a video game. I would love nothing more than a Naruto palette, and this is just really cute. I think you can find this at like Sugoi Mart for $40, but I bought mine from Yes Style for like $5. Lovisa is like a drugstore brand in Japan, so you really shouldn't be spending more than like $10 on their items. Just saying. This is the Nomad, or excuse me, this isn't Nomad. This is Odin's Eye, the Soulmane 2 palette. This has also been another one of my favorite like Nomad palettes to come out this year. If I didn't love the Hella palette as much as I do, I think I would have reached for this one more, but I do enjoy like this blue tone here and this lilac shade. The shimmers in this palette are absolutely beautiful. I love this orangey yellow one as well. This is a really good palette, and the formula in this palette is very, very nice. I do have an older Nomad palette that I'm sure we'll talk about eventually, and I wish that that palette had this formula because this one is really, really amazing. So I'm holding on to this one as well. And then I have the Fall Magic palette by, this says Alien Cosmetics, but they are now called Unearthly Cosmetics. And I'm keeping this one as well. I don't know if this palette was limited edition, if they're bringing it back. I love the metallics in this palette. I do think that they're really pretty. I really enjoy the mattes. This is more like, I don't know, I don't want to say that this is my fall winter palette, but I don't really reach for this one when it is hotter out, but this is a very, very pretty palette. I love, love, love the cashmere shimmer in this palette. It is very pretty. The Alien, I've played with a number of different Unearthly Cosmetics palettes, and this one is a really good one, so if you can get your hands on it, I would suggest it. Okay, now we can see the inside of this palette, or of this basket. Oh god, there's so much going on. I have the Natasha Denona Mini Biba palette, and this is like my travel neutral palette. This is the small one. This is the one that I will pull out and kind of store in my work bag if I need to do my makeup at work. And this is cute. Like, I don't know. I want to try more of the different mini palettes, but I like having this mini palette versus the like midi of the Biba palette. I don't need it. This one's just fine. Although these ones aren't metallic, I kind of wish that the pans were the same size as the midi palette so then I can swap them out, because I do like the size of this casing. But this one is really cute. I have my Soft Glam 2 palette in here. This was limited edition and a celebration for the Soft Glam palette. Just like the Norvina palette, this one has put in a lot of work for me, so it's not going anywhere. I'm gonna hang on to this palette. The orange soda shade, you know, really has done a lot of work for me. I really do appreciate it. And this tempera shade was an inner corner highlight that sometimes I forget that I have, and then when I pull this palette out, I'm like, oh my god, I gotta pull it back out again. This one is really good. I have this Juvia's Place, the Rebels Gray palette, and this is a gray monochromatic palette. I did make a really cool recreation of the look Britney Spears had in the Oops, I Did It Again video, but because I have that other quad from Clados, I don't need this palette. I wish this was like a true white, or like a matte white, or a matte light gray, but all three of these are metallics, with the only matte being this deep gray. And I don't reach for it. I actually haven't reached for this palette since making that Britney Spears video, so it's time to let this one go. Let's see. Do I want to start from the front and go back? Should I start from the sides? This is the Game Beauty Harbinger palette, and this isn't going anywhere. I enjoyed this palette. This has the grays that I like. This red molten shade right here is absolutely a dream. This is a really nice red, and I love this Abyss like duochrome glittery kind of shade. It's absolutely gorgeous. Dawn is also a nice shimmer shade. I also love looking at this palette, because then I'm like, oh my gosh, Destiny 2 and you know, like a Zelda dungeon, and just, I don't know, it's really fun. I like this palette. I want to get my hands on their Cyberpunk palette, but the reviews I saw of it, like, the formula doesn't look as great as this one is. Like, I love the formula of this Harbinger palette, so let me know in the comments down below if you've tried their Cyberpunk palette and you have good reviews. Like, let me know if I should have that one in my collection. Okay, and then I have this Glam Light Icy palette, and I found this at TJ Maxx. And this palette, apparently this collection came out early 2022. It's a blue monochromatic palette, and for that I'm going to hold on to it because I don't have too many blues in my collection. And some of these are true blues, and some of these are kind of like not a true teal, because they're not like necessarily green leaning, but they're not like a true, like this is a true blue, this is a true blue, this is a true blue, but then like these ones kind of have like, I don't know, they're a bit more green leaning. The Glam Light formula is new to my collection, and I do kind of have to learn how to play with these shades a little bit more, but they do blend well with my other shadows. Like, I don't notice, when I do notice weird things happening, I think that's me, not the palette. Like, I'm just not utilizing the formula in the way that I should, but I do think that this is a nice palette. I wish my first introduction to Glam Light was a different palette, because this one I don't think is a good representation of their formula. I think that's a nice way to put it. Okay, and then I have these two Colourpop palettes, and this one, the Little Ray of Sunshine is discontinued. It's no longer available. And then this Wannabe palette. Let's talk about Little Miss Sunshine first. I have a lot of things to say about Wannabe. I have this palette in my collection. It's an all matte kind of, I don't know if this is really monochromatic, but it's more of like a yellow color story. I'm actually going to declutter this one. I haven't reached for it in a very long time, and even when it was new in my collection, I think I've only used this a handful of times. So I'm going to try and give this to my coworker who tends to like more shades like this. I don't need to hold on to this. If I want yellow shades, I can find them in other palettes. And this is the Wannabe collection. This was new to Colourpop. As you can see, like, it's very similar in color story to the Little Miss Sunshine, right? Or Little Ray of Sunshine. But this one, actually, the bottom one actually has like metallics, where this one is the true matte. These two kind of go well together. This was first released at Ulta, and then it was taken off. Like, I bought mine off the Ulta website, and then it was taken off, and then it was brought back, but then it was never really talked about. I actually swatched this palette to make a review video, and then I never filmed me using this palette, because I don't think I ever did. I think I only swatched it. But these two shades, or like the mattes in this palette, are more of like a cream to powder formula, but they are kind of like dry. They're not very, I don't know how to explain it. They're just very dry, and I'm not a huge fan of them. This So Nectar shade is absolutely pretty, but I can't hold on to a palette for just one shade. So I'm also gonna declutter this one because I haven't really used it, and it's just kind of collecting dust in my collection, and I always forget that I have it. And then this is the, gosh, if you watched last year's Declutter, I said I was going to try and use this palette a bit more to see if I want to keep this around. But this is the Lime Crime Prelude Exposed palette, and I didn't quite use it at all again this year. But, gosh, and then like looking at it, is it not the same color story as the Mini Biba palette? Like, are these not just similar shades? Like, this Abyss shade is this one. This Flesh shade is this one. This Nude shade is this one. I do like this Duochrome Shift shade, but I mean, formulas have advanced in time. And I'm sure I have something like this in even my Dollhouse palette. I think I'm okay with finally letting this one go as well. Like, I just don't use it. Lime Crime is a brand that, like, I don't know what they're doing anymore, and I don't know if they're going to be around much longer. I don't know. I don't think that they're really doing I just don't know what they're doing, and it makes me sad because I used to love this brand so much, and I think it's time to part ways with this palette. Okay. I have the Nabla Cutie palette in analog, and I think this came out, was it last year? Wintertime last year? This is a nude palette. I mean, gosh, it really is the Prelude palette, like kind of similar color story there. I compared this one with the Mini Biba palette and have the exposed Prelude palette. I love the Nabla Cutie formulas. I love the shades in this collection. I love the formula of this collection. I'm gonna hang on to this one because I do love it. I have no problems with it. And on top of that, this is the Nabla Cutie palette. This is in Wild Berry, and I'm also keeping this one. I reach for these ones more often than you would think, and I like having them in my collection, especially as reference. This Alchemy 2.0 is like my favorite duochrome shade of all time, and this palette, I don't know if this palette is still available. It is an older palette. Like, they have definitely released a lot more since then, but I don't like this is the Cutie number 5 and this is the Cutie number 7. Nabla is also a brand that I don't know what's going on with them. Like, I really do like them, but they've kind of, Nabla is also one of those brands where they've kind of disappeared and I don't know what's going on with them, but we can talk about that in a different video. I have a hair ribbon in here. Sorry about that. Okay, this is the BH Opal palette. This was the Birthstone palette for October, and I'm not getting rid of it. There is a pressed glitter in here. I don't mind this pressed glitter. Of pressed glitters, this one is really pretty and doesn't do anything weird to my eye or just in general, so that one's fine. I love the pastel shades in here, and I do like the larger opal shade that's in here. I'm gonna hold on to this because I do like this, and I do reach for it more times than not. Like, this is actually the blue pastel shade that I will pull for, but this Faithful shade is a really nice orange as well. I have the Odin's Eye Erd palette, and I'm not getting rid of this. This past shade kind of reminds me of the Soot shade in the Hella palette, although this one is a true, well, I don't want to say it's a true brown. It's just not as like purple plummy leaning as the Soot shade, but I can pair this one with pink shades, and it kind of shifts and transforms and looks more purple leaning, but then with green shades it does pull more brown, and it's really pretty. This luxury like metallic green is like one of my favorite metallic greens. This one in that Mateo shade, if I want a metallic green, these are the ones I pull for. It's really pretty. I'm gonna keep it. I have the Colourpop So Very Lovely palette, and if you remember, this was one of my favorite palettes for a long time. This was like a really gorgeous, gorgeous palette, and I still like it. I just think it was mostly this macaroon and eyelet shade that called to me, but I think I'm actually gonna declutter this palette as well. I just don't use it as often, and the shades in this palette I kind of have in other palettes, and I like the formula and performance of those shades more than this one. Not that this one is bad, it's just discontinued and I don't really pull for it ever, so I'm gonna pass this one along. And then I have the Colourpop Sailor Moon, and just like the Detective Conan palette, I'm not getting rid of this one because this is actually an anime palette, and I mean, I don't know if you can see her, she has one of those like she changes, like she's smiling. I like to use this gif as well in my Instagram stories and just in chats, but I haven't actually reached for this palette for a while. It does have those like glitter in the metal or in the matte shades, and it does have pops of color. I mean, maybe I'll pull this one out, especially with going on my no buy. I think I'll gravitate towards this palette a lot more just to see if I can really get the use out of it. But I am just going to hang on to it for the collection, like for collector's value, just because it is, again, an anime palette that's makeup. Or I guess an anime product that's makeup. This is the What Dreams Are Made Of Colourpop and Lizzie McGuire palette, and when this palette came out, it was my absolute favorite and I used it all the time, and I even have a joke with my partner about it being a Lizzie McGuire weekend. I'm not decluttering this palette because Lizzie McGuire is my, like, when I think of like Disney Channel shows, that was my Disney Channel show, and I like there is pressed glitters in this palette, but I do like the mattes in this palette and the shimmers that aren't pressed glitters. The So Mature and Outfit Repeater shades are one of those weird like glitter in the matte shades, just like in the Sailor Moon palette. I think Colourpop has re-released this formula in a way that performs a lot better. I think these shades walked, so their new ones can run. So I guess for comparison, I'll hang on to it that way, but truly I'm hanging on to this again for the collector's sake because this was a collab that I was really excited for, and I'm happy to have this in my collection. I just don't really reach for it as much. And then I have, the Colourpop Plush Like Me palette, and I love this palette. Again, it's another one of those like palettes for the goth girls. I don't even think that I'm goth. Like, just because I like Joy Division and Morrissey, I don't think that makes me goth. I think that just kind of makes me hip. Why do I always find glue everywhere? I think that the formula in this palette is of the good Colourpop formula. The shades themselves are absolutely gorgeous. The shade TLC is kind of like a duochrome kind of shade. And it really can transform a look. Same with the throwback shade. This is a beautiful, beautiful palette, and I think this is my favorite Colourpop palette of all time. Like this one right here. Just as far as like the formula and the color story and the like just all of it, I reach for this so much, so much year round. This is a Kailava palette, and Kailava is one of those brands. They used to be called Muse Beauty, and for a while they were going by Kailava, formerly known as Muse Beauty. They're now Kailava. They are an indie brand from Texas, and this is the number 2 of, I don't know French, so I'm trying to avoid saying the palette name, as you can tell. I know part 1 took over the internet, and that was the only reason I found out about this brand, Muse Beauty, and I think I did a review for this palette, and then I never touched this palette again. Or I touched it maybe once or twice after the review, but I can't really remember. If I did use this palette again, it was just to use it on camera. Like, it wasn't something that I reached for outside of camera. So I think I'm just going to declutter this and find a better home for it. It's not that the formula is bad. It's just I liked part 1 because that one was more like pastel, and then this one is more like mid-tone, but it's all the mattes are mid-tone, and then there's like the shimmers, which is okay, but this is more of a complementary palette, like a companion palette, rather than something that I can use on its own. And for that, I'm just going to declutter it because why hold on to something that's not bringing me joy? I have these 3 BH palettes, and I remember talking about these in like a haul video that I did, and I got these from TJ Maxx. They were very affordable. Like, look, the stickers are still on the back. I haven't used these since I got them. So this is the Passion in Paris. It still has the plastic in here. These three palettes were palettes that Angelica Nieves has suggested, you know, are of the really good BH formula. She talks about these all the time. These are like her personal favorites. Passion in Paris is like her favorite palette of all time. I haven't used mine. I also haven't used the Blueberry Muffin palette, as you can see. And I also haven't used the Avocado Toast palette, as you can see. I'm gonna hold on to these palettes because I want to use them. I want to see what all the fuss is about, even though these palettes aren't available on the BH website anymore, and you really can't find these anywhere. Like, you can try to find them in your TJ Maxx. I think that they are really pretty, and I want to use them. I really, really do. So I'm gonna hold on to these. I'm gonna put them right here in the back. And then I have the Odin's Eye Alva palette, and this is like one of the older formulas. I think these were one of the first palettes that Odin's Eye ever came out with. And I enjoy this palette, but I don't really reach for it as often as I thought I would. Dandelion and Lilac and this Daisy shade and even Coffee Bean are all super, super pretty. But I think this is a palette that maybe one of my coworkers will enjoy. I loved it when I had it, but I've tried the other formulas from Odin's Eye, like their more recent formulas, and so I think this one is just a bit outdated. And I think this is going to be one of those palettes that they phase out. And if they do re-release this palette with the new formula, I'm definitely going to buy it because I love this color story. But a lot of these shades I have in the Plush Like Me collection, or I have it in the, what's it called? The Natasha Denona Retro palette. And then I have pops of yellow here and there, so I'll be fine. I'll make do. And I think that's it. So let me kind of, oh, excuse me, I have these quads from Colourpop. Here, let me stick these back in here. I have these quads from Colourpop. I have the Tender Loving Cancer. This one is like my favorite. I love the color story in this palette. It is super, super pretty. It has like a Super Shock shade in here that's absolutely gorgeous, and this matte. You know what? This matte is kind of like the same one from the Bridgerton palette, although a little bit deeper, but I do like to use this one as a lower lash kind of shade. I have the Creamsicle quad. I think this one is still available, I think. But again, it just has like those corally, like pinky tones. I do like this one for when I want those kind of shades. I have this Gata Agate. I think this one is still available. At least I hope so. This is one of the prettier like purpley shades. I reach for this one quite a lot. And then I have this green one. This is an Emerald Away. This one is so pretty. These are another set of green metallics that I like to reach for, specifically this one because it's a lighter metallic that I like. And then I like this mid-tone green as well. These two kind of pair together. Absolutely gorgeous. I will probably pick up more Colourpop quads when they release more. Hopefully they release more of them this year. I think these are really, really good formulas. They're the best. If they start putting these formulas in the big quads, I'd be pretty happy. But let me put my palettes away and then we can close out this video. And then I forgot, as I was putting my palettes away, I forgot to mention, this is the Chestnut Toad palette from Sigil Inspired. This isn't going anywhere. I want this brand to come back to the States. It breaks my heart that it's not, because I love, love, love these tones. They're absolutely beautiful, but I just can't get my hands on them right now. And God, if you have it in your collection and you're trying to declutter or sell some of your product, let me know. I'd be very interested to get my hands on some more Tammy Tenuka. But let's talk about the palettes that I am decluttering, or at least count them out. Gosh, that Gemini shade got Gemini everywhere. Disgusting. I need to wash my mat. Poor Nobra. Her face is filthy. I have 1, 2, 9 palettes. And looking at my palettes tucked away, I'm very happy with the results of my declutter. I have a lot of green, pinks, and purples, so I mean, I can avoid those shades in 2023 because I already have them a few times over. But I'm very happy with my collection and what I have. Let me know in the comments down below, did I declutter any of your favorites? Did you also declutter some of the same palettes I have? I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions down below. And if you liked hanging out with me today and you would like to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on another video. And I will see you guys tomorrow, question mark. I should take that back. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.